Um, I've been in business for 21 years now, building all kinds of software. And so what keeps me up during the day and what keeps me busy is always building technology that disrupts an existing process. And for the last 17 years, that's really been around insurance claims, insurance policy management, and also the insurance side of construction. So I'm at currently a construction risk conference, hanging out with a bunch of brokers and surety bond producers and carriers, TPAs that are all here, and so I'm visiting with them. Gotten certainly back into conferences, and it's been good to see people face to face, making new relationships because I've got three companies.
We need that.
Yeah, we need it. I've got three companies. JBKnowledge is my insurance service provider, where we work for carriers, brokers, TPAs, and pharmacy benefit managers, building proprietary enterprise software for claims and policy and CRM, you name it. And then TerraClaim is my insurance claims product that manages largely work comp, property, auto, GL. And so we built and deployed that in the last 2 years. And then SmartCompliance is my certificate of insurance tracking collection platform that deals in claims subrogation. So if you really wanted to get specific, my day is really kept busy through dealing with managing claims and how to do it better and faster and more accurately, how to set good reserves, how to subrogate claims better. That's what keeps me up. Now that's professionally. I'm a pilot, so like all pilots, I think about flying all the time, and so any good reason to fly is a good day. And so I flew down here to Florida, where I am right now, and was in Fort Myers at another conference yesterday, and I'm down in I'm in Fort Myers today. I was in Tampa yesterday, so that's what keeps me up is how do we build software, how do we build technology that changes the way that we do things and helps human beings to be way more efficient and effective and not have them do boring menial tasks.
How many flight hours do you have?
1,179. That just looked at my logbook this morning. So I've got about 300 turbine hours, and then I've got the rest are multi and single engine piston flying, and got my seaplane license 2 weeks ago, and so I've got a few hours of flying seaplanes, and I'm currently in glider school. Wow. so I can learn to play. I'm learning to fly, unpowered gliders, so I can get my glider rating. So flying's an amazing discipline and practice for business in general, because it forces you to use checklists and be thorough and learn. And I believe it really assists in, keeping your brain in learning mode. And it's a wonderful and mostly obsessive hobby.
So I'm just curious about. So where are you based?
College Station, Texas, home of Texas A&M University.
So you rent a plane and you're just like, okay, I have a conference in Florida. Hey, yeah, let's fill it up and head out. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an airplane owner, so I use mine. But yeah, so it's
okay, even better.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I've worked a long time for that, saved up for a long time, and if you're not an airplane owner, there's flight schools and clubs that have planes available for rent, and you would rent that. And I did for quite some time. I would go to the flight school and I would rent the plane and then fly it to a trip and back, and you pay sometimes you pay a minimum per day, and then you buy your fuel and all that stuff. So I did that. I did that for some time.
No, I can see the calculation. Usually we say, can I drive there? So is that the 5 hours drive, or should I fly? Because later on, the challenge when you drive to a conference. So we had the dig in San Diego. So for me, it was 2 hours, no traffic drive. And the main thing was like, gas, and where do I park the car? Yeah. So I can see that as a challenge when you fly in with your own plane I assume it's a 4 or maybe a 6-seater.
Mine, yeah. So I've had a single engine piston, and then I've had a couple of twin engine pistons, Piper airplanes that are 6-seaters. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But my
Gas and
calculate
parking.
my calculation is all, it's an hour. If it's an hour and a half or less, I'll drive. But if it's more than an hour and a half, I'll probably want to fly. So it's a wonderful. My mom was a pilot. My dad was a pilot. My mom's father was a pilot. So it runs in our family. Of course, the insurance markets really run aviation, so it has helped to understand how policy and underwriting and claims work, and being in the aviation, because the insurance carriers really dictate flying more than the FAA does.
Okay, let's talk more about insurance, because at this point, I'm sure that I lost like 55% of the listeners or the viewers, because this is mainly viewers. Anyway, the majority will see the 5 minutes sound bite, and those who are curious about that will catch on the full episode. Yeah. So, claims, construction. First of all, did you manage to be at Blueprint?
No.
Okay, so Blueprint, that was the property technology conference that we had in parallel to ITC. So that was on the ITC was on the second floor, Blueprint was on the third floor, because everything goes, there is so much overlap.
Sure, yeah.
And of course with insurance. So for next year, put a small asterisk there.
I will. We were an exhibitor at InsurTech Connect, so we had a booth there.
Cool. How was it?
How was it for you? Yeah, it was a great conference. We got some good leads, good lead flow, and good connections made. I'm glad we exhibited there.
And what type of customers? Who are the main or the good leads that you met there?
I'll just say in general, rather than speaking, because I don't have the specific lead list in front of me that came off of that event. But we have a very good business with self-insured groups, self-insured funds, self-insured companies, and small regional third-party administrators. And so that's really a sweet spot for us, in particular on our products. I've been building software in insurance, and my first insurance clients was 2004. And I got into insurance through the property business. We worked for a property underwriting inspector. So they did all the underwriting inspections for residential insurance. And so when, State Farm or USAA or Nationwide would write a house, they would order an inspection, and that would go to the system that I built, so that my client, who is the inspector, could go and inspect the house and check the roof out and then report back on its condition. And so that was my first exposure to insurance. And now, of course, that was on the carrier side. We did a lot of work with large carriers and got to interact with them on property. But I got into comp in 2008. So it's been 14 years in comp now. And so anybody who's in comp is definitely a friend of mine. I like working in comp. And so RIMS is a really big conference for us because of all the property and casualty business there, all the work comp business, and National Work Comp Conference, the Work Comp Institute event in Orlando, National Work Comp in Vegas. Those are just as big for us from a meet and greet perspective as ITC is, because it's been a really great place to make relationships with everybody in the industry. So that's the ideal person, though. If they're a SIG or a SIF or they're a TPA, like we want to know if they're large deductible and self-insured retention, if they adjudicate their own claims, if they're trying to subrogate claims. I mean, that's the world I've lived in for a long time now. So it's exciting. There's a lot of problems to tackle in claims, a ton of problems to tackle.
What do you do in subrogation? Because besides SafeKeep, you are maybe the only other company that I'm familiar that is sort of a startup, but been around for a very long time. Yeah. That is dealing heads-on with subrogation.
Yeah, well, if you're going to subrogate a claim, let's say I'll give an example. You're a trucking company or you're a waste haul company, and you rent. A lot of them rent the tires. They rent their vehicle, but they rent the tires separately. The tire blows. You want to subrogate the claim to the vendor that's managing your tires for you, right? That's always the objective. And so to do that, you have to have a certificate of insurance, and it has to name you, and it has to have the right endorsement language. It's got to be structured properly. And so that's really what we've done with SmartCompliance now. We have hundreds of clients that have been in business for about 9-10 years with that product, collecting and analyzing certificates of insurance, making sure it's all accurate. We put some machine learning on top of the document so it can read a lot of the text and read the form and get it into a data where we can analyze it and then automate it, and then make sure that they get their cert in, make sure they're compliant, and then make it easy for them when they're managing the claim to look up who's responsible and what their insurance is and get it subrogated, man. I mean, you want that claim, you want that claim off your policy, off your books. And so that's what we've spent a lot of time doing. We've spent just as much time with the adjuster managing their claim software, trying to make it a more efficient process.
What's a current challenge for those guys? Because at the end of the day, an adjuster, if it's, is connected or to the TPA or is an independent or is coming within a carrier, and they're like, they are just people in the trenches, and someone in the system is like telling them, hey, you need to use this. And they go like, okay, that's a process. Yeah.
Adjusters have a lot of challenges right now. And a lot of them have a pretty high caseload. A lot of them have a pretty high number of claims per adjuster. Their TPAs or the administrators are getting squeezed, and they're having to do more with the same amount of resources. There's claim volume can be really erratic. But I'll tell you this: like when I talk to claims adjusters, which is often, a lot of their big challenges are just overcoming all the manual tasks they have to perform. I mean, let's just take comp, for example. In comp, so much of comp is medical payments. Well, every medical provider out there wants to get paid immediately. So they just harass the ever-living hell out of adjusters. They call them, they email them and call them. So adjusters are spending just as much time on the phone answering medical providers on when they're going to get paid as they are dealing with claimants. But that's not what you want from your adjusters. Your adjusters are not supposed to be your accounts payable department. But so many adjusters get roped in to dealing with accounts payable because the providers call the adjuster. And that takes time away from them helping people get back to work. I mean, the whole point of indemnification, the entire freaking concept, is to restore people to the condition that they were in before. And you can't do that if you're not talking to them and managing the claim. And so that's a huge challenge, is they have all these manual tasks, manual data entry, manual emails. They're having to use all these tools at their disposal and many that they have to create. And in the meantime, they're getting harassed by all the medical providers that want to get paid. And then they're getting harassed by all the non-medical providers, all the ancillary service providers that want to get paid. They get squeezed hard. It's a hard job. And then, you're counting on them to have time to sit and think about what reserve to set. Because if they screw up the reserve setting, you could end up literally, some of my clients, walk me through the earning per share implications on publicly traded companies because you either over or under reserve a claim. It's a really serious responsibility. So that's been what I'm seeing out of claims adjusters. And again, I deal with largely, self-insured retention, large deductible claims adjusters at the self-insured group or the self-insured company or the TPA. But they all have they all have the same challenges.
So, and this is where, it's like the drum roll and here's my solution kind of, or here I come to save the day. So how do you come to save the day? It's like, man, I'm sorry that it's like, I'm reading from a questionnaire now. It's like, I'm setting it up and I'm like ready for you to crash the ball down.
Yeah. Well, you have to tackle all of these little problems at once, right? So there's not one magic bullet. I mean, to say that you're just going to auto adjudicate every claim and you're going to eliminate people from the process is just patently absurd.
Oh, no. First of all, we are against doing that. It's more about empowering, helping them, making them more efficient.
Exactly.
There was so much power shift within the TPAs, especially the big TPAs that said, without naming names, the big three.
Yeah.
Two, actually.
Now two.
Yeah. lay back and, how can I say that? Carriers prefer to have a good relationship with them rather than get better solutions and cheaper prices. But sorry, you were answering something.
Well, the old, what was that? It was Minnie
Talking
Mouse.
about your solution and
No,
how...
no, no, no. Who said it best? It was "Here I come to save the day." Right?
It's Mighty Mouse.
It was Mighty Mouse, right? Mighty Mouse would say that. And I think the question is like, who's doing that? Well, first off, I'm a huge advocate of lean thinking. So Toyota Way is a great book, 2 Second Lean, really studying and understanding lean, because that's, in my opinion, how you have to tackle claims adjusting. And you have to say, okay, where's all the inefficiency? Where's all the BS that keeps you from getting people back to work in comp, or restoring the claimant in auto or in property, fixing the house, fixing the commercial building? So step number one is eliminate multiple software packages they have to use, because that really drags them down. Like if they have a separate imaging system from claims, that's ridiculous. If they have to have a separate communication system for their claim system, or if payments are over here in their manual. I mean, we still see, I was talking to a claims department that up until a few years ago still used a typewriter to put the address on the envelope of the check. I mean, just really silly things. There's a lot of really silly things that burden adjusters and keep them from being the best they can be, and really keep us from, minimizing losses. Because if you drag these claims on because you're really inefficient, or you're not touching the file enough, and that's a big deal. If they're not touching that claim file enough, and they're not talking to that claimant enough, then that claimant gets frustrated. And when they get frustrated, they go to a lawyer, and then your claim costs just tripled. And the back to work strategy just got blown to heck. I mean, it's not going to be pretty. And so we've got to eliminate silly things. Item number one. Let's just talk about a couple of examples.
Number one,
because we're looking at like our claim software, TerraClaim. One of the big things that we've done is we've actually wired in integrations with the ancillary service providers. So it is API to API. We are actually talking directly to the data systems at the ancillary service providers. Why? Because most claims adjusters I talk to in comp spend a ton of their time emailing medical files that they should not necessarily be emailing. Sometimes they'll encrypt it and they'll follow the rules, but they do a lot of ordering all of this by email. They'll order drug cards by email with pharmacy benefit managers. They'll have to go to each one of their vendors' portals as well. So they'll have to have 30, and this is what they've told me, 30 tabs open, one for every portal, for every ancillary service provider they have to push an order to. And then they have to go to this, a unique pharmacy system, a unique DME provider, for medical equipment. They got to go to a unique provider for independent medical exams, a different provider for nurse case and telephonic case management. So they've got 30 portals they got to log in. They got to remember who to do it with. And so step number one was we found the biggest providers in the country and we integrated with all of them. And so we said, we're going to integrate. Number one is integration. We've got to continue integrating providers together. And you can say, well, I've got an API integration with this big player and this big player. No. Look, the reality is, like in pharmacy, let's just talk about pharmacy alone, which is a huge part of comp. Pharmacy alone, they all have proprietary in-house systems. How do I know this? Because I've built 2 of them. I built 2 separate proprietary PBM systems with our professional service wing, because there's really not something off the shelf that works for these PBM providers. So step number one has been integration. You got to get integrated with the systems so the adjusters aren't having to manually rekey all these orders in and push data around manually. Same thing with payments. Same thing with regulatory filings. Holy crap. We could talk.
Is that 2 or 3 already?
No, we're still on number one, integration. Integration is medical, ancillary service providers, medical service providers, regulatory filings, payments. That's all integrations, and it's a lot of manual crap. But another really big, huge area of opportunity is intelligence. Right? How are you helping them set reserves? How are you leveraging 8 million claim records to provide a recommendation on what they should set the reserve at, so that you're just giving them some guidance that they're normally not getting? How are you identifying claims that are probably going to run over? And it's not just because of comorbidity factors like they're overweight or they're diabetic or they're a smoker, right? It's about much, much more than that. And so I would say integration is a huge area that we're focusing on in claims. And that's like with our platform, TerraClaim, we focused on that. And also with the proprietary systems that we build for people when they want a custom built system. Integrations first, intelligence is number two, right? We really dive into what kind of machine learning can we use for this? What kind of optical character recognition? Can we do voice to text, text to voice? Can we do, all of those are little subsets of AI that we can start to leverage now. We love Azure, so we love Azure Cognitive Services. So we're trying to leverage everything Azure Cognitive Services provides, and we're trying to leverage everything that BI software like Power BI, because a lot of folks still aren't even using BI software, right? I mean, it's the truth. They're writing custom SQL reports, and they're really not using BI the way you could.
Listen, and you already jumped like 2 steps forward, which is, hey, let's use AI or whatever, Azure, whatever. Well, Microsoft, if you want to be a sponsor of this podcast, let me know. So if you're using Azure or any one of the other services which are out there or something which is more customized, sure, because when you need to deal and compress and process a large amount of data, AI can do it for you. Otherwise, yes. I want to see you shuffle through thousands of records to understand what you need to do.
What keeps me up at night too is all the data that we're processing and storing on claims data and policy data that no one even looks at, right? Like it never gets looked at. It just goes into cold storage. Like the photos go into cold storage, the video files go into cold storage, the free text goes into cold storage, and none of them are actually used to help make better decisions. And that really keeps me up at night, because I wonder, how much better could we really be if we focused on using all this data? But the last thing of the three things that you said, what's your mighty mouse? Like, how are you changing things? It's integration, it's intelligence, but thirdly, it's automation. And I mean, by automation, okay. I mean, like getting really serious about workflow engines. I mean, we've had workflow engine software out there for ages. And again, I'm only using a Microsoft example because a lot of people have Microsoft Office 365, and a lot of them have started to leverage like Power Apps and Power Automate. And there are some really great tools. Of course, we've built our own proprietary automation tools, but automation and really RPA, robotic process automation, should be the watchword of the day, because just you look at the average underwriter, the average policy administrator, the average claims administrator, so much of their stuff is manual ETL work, extract, transform, load. And that can all be automated, right? We don't need them to remember okay, good claims example. I don't need them to remember they have to send an email today. Let's build a workflow engine so they can schedule emails automatically based on key triggers. I don't need them to remember to reach out to the claimant that day. We can build a workflow engine to do that for them. I don't need them to use their cell phone to text the claimant, as so many of them do. That's ridiculous. And so, I think we spend all day, both with the proprietary stuff we build and with our products, on intelligence, on automation, on integration. Because building just input forms and output forms in a system, that's not that hard. And that's not the essence of computer science anyway.
Okay, just for definition, so I'll be on the. So when you talk about RPA, what exactly is that robotic process automation? How is that different from any other automation, or from, I don't know, a macro script?
Thank you for asking, because I don't build like an RPA product. There's a bunch on the market. One really good one on the, we build automation software and we use RPA tools. So just to be really clear how this works, because there's some really good companies that have built RPA tools. Like one of them is UiPath, right? And for me, and I've had to define RPA, because RPA is not just if this then that. All right, like that's a workflow automation system, right? If this then that, Zapier, these are, you can have triggers, and if this happens, then you trigger something to happen. That's pretty basic. And by basic, I mean in 1991, when I started writing code in GW Basic, I used an if-then statement, and that's exactly what that is, right? It was not that I've
Yes.
been writing code. I'm old enough to say I've been writing code for 31 years, and that's some basic crap. What UiPath does, and what other RPA tools, because there's dozens of RPA tools out there, and we're starting to see a lot more uptake on this around the insurance space, is they build dynamic, adaptable software robots that can log into web-based software and use it like a human, extract data, reformat that information, and then key it into a web form like a human would, and it adapts to that web form. And so then there's a really good website that'll really sum it all up for you, rpachallenge.com. RPA Challenge presents a web form, but it changes it every time you refresh the page, so that it changes it enough to see how adaptable your RPA software is to dealing with a field that's moved 10 pixels over and up to the right and had a slight name change, to see if it can actually adapt to the new condition and still get the data entered into the form. So RPA Challenge should kind of sum it up for all of you, because it's really fun. You go to the website and then you try and build an RPA bot. Most people have built something like it resembles an RPA bot if they use Microsoft Excel and they built a macro. But macros are not RPA because they're not adaptable. If you change a single cell after you record your macro, when you go to play it back, it's going to probably break. And that is not how RPA software works. The RPA gives us a really interesting hallmark and a really interesting way to view robotic workflow and automation, right? It's not just a workflow engine, it's actually adaptable. And that's what we're all trying to build.
What do you do in construction?
I've been really involved in construction since 2006. There was an opportunity to get involved in the subcontractor pre-qualification and bidding space. That's really closely tied in with insurance, because to get surety bond, the surety bonding companies require that people get pre-qualified, and so does sub-default insurance. So you have builder's risk insurance, sub-default insurance, which is insurance that pays out if your subs financially default and walk off the job, because that can be a pretty costly process, in particular if you screwed up paying them and you paid them too much too early. So we built a subcontractor pre-qualification system 16 years ago. We built a bidding system to go along with it, because you really can't do pre-qual without bidding. And so we built these systems and really lucked out. We hit the market at the right place at the right time. Right when the economy got really bad, we hit the market. And construction companies went from not having to bid on work to having to bid on a lot of work. And subs went from never defaulting to having a substantial number of defaults, which triggered a lot of sub-default insurance claims. It also triggered a lot of builders' liability claims. And so it really tightened up the entire market. And then carriers started requiring software like ours, which was a wonderful position to be in when you have a required piece of software. And so from 2006 2018, we built this software called SmartBid, and I sold it 3 years ago in 2018 to a competitor of mine, iSquareFoot Construct Connect. And so I spent a lot of time in construction and really understanding construction risk. Right now I'm at a construction risk conference in Fort Myers. I was at a construction MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing conference yesterday in Tampa. And because they've got to really get their hands around claim subrogation, because they have a lot of vendors, and they don't do it. They don't always do a great job of making sure they all have insurance and that they're all covered. And then we help them with that. And they also don't do a great job of really, really mitigating all the risk they have, because they carry a ton of risk. They have a bunch of high risk workers. They have a high risk job site. They pay a ton of money in comp, right? And then they have a ton of money in builder's risk, and they have a lot of liability. And so risk and construction go together hand in hand. That's why I've been so focused on that industry for so long. And it goes better with insurance than most people would think. And so while we are an insurtech company at the heart, we've built a lot of insurtech and risk management software for construction, because they need it so bad. I mean, they just carry too much risk, right? And they have razor thin margins. You're talking about the average general contractor makes 1 to 3% net margin at the end of the day. And so if they really manage their risk situation properly, they can double that. And that's a big number on a high volume. And so that's why we've spent so much time studying that problem and building tooling to help us solve that. Right now, the tools they buy from us are SmartCompliance and TerraClaim because they self-insure, they need to subrogate claims, and so that's what they do. But we've spent a lot of time solving other problems as well.
We passed the 30 minutes mark, which means that I need to ask you the last question. Can you give us a recommendation? It can be anything, a life hack, a movie, you name it.
I would strongly recommend that everybody read Black Box Thinking. I really, really, really enjoyed it. My business partner, Sebastian, and I have the world's best business partner. He's an amazing guy. He reads 30
That's
books.
So important.
It is. He reads 30 books a year, and this is one that he boiled down and said, we all have to read this together, and we did as a leadership team. And he's my chief operating officer and integrator. And it talks a lot about learning how to study mistakes that you make, how to accept that mistakes are part of learning, and how to really run. They talk a lot about running controlled tests. We call them split tests in SaaS software. But it really was a great book. It was written by a fantastic British author, and Syed. And he used a lot of British case studies, and he compared and contrasted medicine and aviation. Medicine, where there's a culture of never studying your mistakes and not publishing any of them for fear of embarrassment, and the opposite culture in one that I'm part of, aviation, where we obsessively study mistakes. We publish all the case studies and we study them together. They're very, very different cultures, and one of these things has driven error rates down substantially over 50 years and the other hasn't. And that's because of the practice of studying mistakes. And so I think that's probably the best life hack. It goes hand in hand with lean as well, because lean is all about improving efficiency and eliminating waste and fixing what bugs you. So I think learning to study mistakes and learning to study pain, I think that's probably the best life hack, because you can fix everything around you. You stop accepting the mediocrity that surrounds you, even in your personal life, and start fixing things, and you start studying mistakes and stop viewing them as something that you should hide from.
Fantastic. Thank you. James, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much for your time and energy and everything.
Well, thanks for having me on. I always love talking InsurTech, and certainly have enjoyed talking with you. And you're not too far from the California coast. Is that what you said?
Well, California coast, yeah, it's like 5 miles that way.
Yeah, so I'll be in San Diego in March for a conference out there, and I think I'll be there. I think I'll be in San Diego twice in the next 2 months. So,
ooh la la.
Yeah, so would be happy to visit with you.
That will be great. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Thanks.